What's happening, Hardscapers? This is episode 320 of the How to Hardscape podcast, where we talk about how you can start and grow your hardscaping business. And on today's episode, I have a budgeting, estimating, knowing your numbers type episode here. This is my favorite subject personally, and it should be yours too. But with this, we have the How to Hardscape headquarters software, which can help you with all of this, plus many more features. And maybe we'll touch on a little bit throughout this episode, but the focus here is going to be on budgeting and estimating from your budget to be able to recover your expenses in your business. Your indirect expenses. This really ties into a Cycle CPA episode that we listened to previously in the past 2 weeks here that they released on this podcast. So definitely check that out, and we can get into talking about budgeting after we thank our sponsors. Cycle CPA. If you're looking for bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA at cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for money off their services there. Patio SEO has hopped on board as a sponsor, and they are a leading marketing and brand building company in the hardscape industry. And if you don't know, this company is run by James Reed. We've had him on the podcast a couple of times, some of our more popular episodes, and he owns hardscape businesses across the country. And now you can have access to the same in-house marketing team that he has access to at patioseo.com. So if you're looking for a killer website, targeted ads, or data-driven strategies to grow, check them out at patioseo.com. August 19th to the 20th, Knowledge Tree Consulting is having another event at Koivik. This event is in Toronto. Koivik is in Milton. I went to their event last year with Earthscape. It was awesome. I can't recommend this enough. There's going to be a link in the show notes for you to sign up for it and get 50% off your tickets today. If you're planning to go to Hardscape North America in Louisville, Kentucky, October 22nd to the 24th, you can use promo code VIPHTH to sign up, get 50% off your registration. That also gives us a little bit of a kickback and helps us here at the How to Hardscape podcast. And without further ado, let's get into today's episode. All right, my favorite topic, knowing your numbers, budgeting, estimating, whatever you want to talk about with this. My main thing with hearing about knowing your numbers is not to take other people's numbers and try to apply them to your own business. You really do not know the ins and outs of the company's bookkeeping, accounting that they are doing to get at a certain percent of profit. So if you hear somebody say that they do X amount percentage of profit, you don't know if they're talking, unless you have a open and honest conversation with them, and maybe they can even open up their books to you. You can't really know if they're talking about gross profit, net profit. What profit are they talking about? Gross profit being everything after direct costs are taken off that project, so not accounting for those overhead expenses. And with that, that would be the revenue minus the cost of goods sold, labor, and net profit being anything and everything that's left over after paying overhead expenses and salaries and so on and so forth there that are not direct labor to that project. But even if somebody was to say, no, this is net profit for us, there's still other things that you need to consider to be able to really get down to the bottom of whether or not they're actually, like, what they are talking about is what can be applied to your business and your goals and so on and so forth here. For example, a owner's salary. I see this many times where somebody says that they are X percent profitable, and if you ask them, well, how much do you pay yourself salary out of your business, they say that is the profit is my salary. And that's just not the case. That's not how businesses are run. The owner gets paid a salary. Anything and everything left over is net profit after that, and after all expenses are paid in that business during a certain time period. So with net profit, I always look at it as the return on investment of my capital and sweat equity. So all of the equipment that we buy and tools, that needs to have an ROI from it, not just paying off that equipment and paying off those tools. There needs to be a percentage return on investment for those. our marketing spend, besides just our marketing spend bringing in revenue, it also should be accounted for in our budget to be able to account for the net profit we should make on that. This is our capital and sweat equity that's being put into jobs and to our business. And there's a lot of risk that we take on as business owners that needs to be rewarded. And that is our return on investment. And it should be a healthy return on investment, especially in a project-based business that doesn't have any recurring revenue tied to it, unless you do have some sort of recurring revenue, say cleaning services for the pavers and so on, or if you have a maintenance division, because those recurring services bring in a higher multiple on the back end if you do decide to sell off. Not to say that project-based businesses are not valuable, but the return on investment is really coming from the upfront project that you are quoting in the net profit that comes from that. And that's what I believe, and that's based on my actions of actually running a profitable business and putting that capital into another business, which would be the How to Hardscape headquarters software that has some sort of back-end intrinsic value that's being built in the software through that recurring revenue model. And for anybody, that could be real estate that they put it in, or another business that they put it in, as long as you're not stretching yourself too thin. But just know that now's the time to make that profit in your business and not push off that profitability down the line. It's very easy to say, well, I'm not going to pay myself that much this year and I'm just going to reinvest into the business. But at a point, you need to know whether or not you're still charging for what you should be paying yourself. And this brings me to, in the budget, as an owner, you should include what you should be paying yourself based on a market-based wage. So what I do in my business is I split this up. So this could also be something that skews a gross versus net profit in a business. And I'll show you why here. So as an owner, I split up my salary. I have my infield because I'm an owner operator in the field working. So I have direct labor. So that comes off to give us our gross profit margin. And with that, I have a dollar amount based on what I would have to pay somebody to do the work that I do in the field. So an experienced foreman or project manager, whatever that would be, what would be that dollar amount be for a market-based replacement? And that is what I budget for my direct labor salary in my business. Then I have a separate salary for myself, and this is an overhead salary or an indirect salary. And this is all the administration work that I do in my business. And what I do here is I count up all the different tasks that I do and how many hours I do them per month and figure out what the salary would be for somebody to replace me in that. So for example, I'm a part-time salesman. I'm a part-time designer. If I do my own books, I'm a part-time bookkeeper, which I don't recommend. Check out Cycle CPA if you need a bookkeeper, accountant, CFO services. We want to take a break from today's episode to thank our sponsor, Cycle CPA. It's crucial to review your financial statements on a monthly basis so you can diagnose areas for improving your business's financial health early before they become significant issues. Too many contractors wait until the end of the year to review their financials as they file taxes, when it's often too late to take action to change the outcome. Cycle CPA not only handles bookkeeping and taxes, but they also ensure that you're armed with financial data on a monthly basis to make key business decisions. They offer benchmarking, cash flow forecasting, and assistance in developing targets for financial metrics. With their team of accountants specialized in the hardscape and landscape industry, they currently work with hundreds of companies in this field. Visit cyclecpa.com and for $200 off, mention the How to Hardscape podcast. Now back to our episode. I'm even a part-time administrative person because I'm answering the phone calls, sending out emails, texting, all that stuff. So with that gives me my indirect salary for my business. So if you were to just lump both of those salaries together and call it indirect, then when you do your job costing on a project, which is after that project's completed, what was your estimated amount versus what was your actual amount at the end of the day. So were your materials off? Were your hours that you budgeted for the project off, which also affects the overhead tied to that project? And what was your actual net profit on that project versus what you were trying to get to? So with that, you could skew your numbers if you only have your salary, if you're an owner operator in the field, if you only have your salary in the indirect expenses, because all of a sudden then you might look like you are very gross profitable, but take away that salary and your net profit is where you needed to be or less if you didn't hit your hours on that project. And vice versa, if all of that money was in direct labor, then you would look less gross profitable. But at the end of the day, you could still have the same net profit as in that initial scenario that I talked about there. So this is why I split up those salaries, and we can do that in the How to Hardscape headquarters software, where you can create separate profiles for employees. Also good for employees that are, say, doing snow in the wintertime and they get paid a different salary or wage versus what they're doing in your design build business or maintenance and so on and so forth. So if you have an employee that needs multiple different profiles because they get paid different, that is great to be able to do within our software. Budgeting is really important for your business to be able to create a game plan for your year in terms of the expenses that you're going to incur or budgeting for those expenses that are going to happen in your business, but also be able to set goals in your business and where you want to be and set timelines to, say, flip equipment before they get too old, and to be able to be charging your client for all of those expenses. Because at the end of the day, if you're just saying this is just the cost of doing business, I'll recoup it elsewhere, you're just pushing those expenses down the line until you hurt yourself and you become very unprofitable when you have to replace a piece of equipment or you need to spend more money on marketing because it's a slower year. So in my budgeting process, I usually do this once a year, and then I revisit it if I make a larger purchase or if I'm going, say, marketing wise over my marketing spend that I budgeted for, and maybe I need to replace something, or something went down and something needs to be replaced in terms of a truck, equipment, and I need to update my budget for that. But because I am a small company, it's very easy for me to not have to revisit it throughout the year and just set it once and continue to price my projects from that initial budget. And when it comes to budgeting, I always look at last year and I carry that forward into this year and then make some minor changes as I need to. So for example, I can take a look at my profit and loss statement and be able to say, okay, this is what I had budgeted for this expense. This is what I was actually at. And if I did plan to grow next year, say I was at 1 crew and I need to be at 2 crews, then I might look at my marketing budget and say, we spent this amount. Well, I'm going to need to double the amount of leads that come in, and I need to double my marketing budget. Or it's a sales process thing where you know that with that 1 crew, you let leads slip through your fingers. Maybe it's just a matter of tightening up that sales process to get back to leads sooner, to contact leads sooner, to get a consult sooner, and to get a proposal out sooner. That's very detailed that you can do in the How to Hardscape headquarters software. But all of that is a process thing that you're trying to decide in your budget. Is it a leads problem that I'm let slip through my hands? And can I tighten up my sales pipeline and maybe even keep the same dollar amount for my marketing spend? Or is this a marketing spend problem because I believe my sales process is dialed in and I just need to double my volume of leads, qualified leads, so that I can be able to step up and double my business from 1 crew to 2 crews. And if you do need help with those leads, that is patioseo.com can help you with that. We want to take a break from today's episode to talk about marketing. Are you looking to take your hardscape business to the next level? Well, this is brought to you by Patio SEO, the leading marketing and brand building company in the hardscape industry. And if you don't know, this company is run by James Reed, who owns multiple hardscape businesses across the country. And here's the kicker. You're not just getting access to any team. You're getting access to the very team that helped grow James's own companies, plus hundreds of others in the industry. Whether you need a killer website, targeted ads, or data-driven strategies to grow, Patio SEO has got you covered. They've been in your shoes and know exactly what works. We've had James Reed on the podcast a couple of times, and there's some of our more popular episodes, talking about branding, talking about how he's built companies across the country. And with that, he needs lots of leads, which means he's had to perfect his branding and marketing. And now you can have access to that same in-house team that he has access to for his own hardscape company. So if you're ready to build your brand and see some serious growth, check them out at patioseo.com. That's patioseo.com, or follow James on Instagram at road to 100ms. That's road to 100ms. Let's get your business the attention it deserves. Now back to the episode. I take a look at my equipment and what I had budgeted for in terms of years for that equipment, and whether or not I need to update the amount of service dollars that goes into that equipment, maintenance, and especially as trucks get older, maybe I need to up that amount. Or if I know that the tires need to be replaced this year at some point, that I need to add that to the repair list and the dollar amount that I need to budget for that. And that's just how I go about equipment, besides the calculation of how many years is it going to last you, how much are you buying it for, and what are you going to be able to sell it for after those years of use. So what I do to calculate that is I just go the dollar amount that I'm going to buy it for, whether it's new or used. So let's say it is a used truck and I'm going to buy it for easy numbers. Let's just do 10,000 for easy numbers. And let's say 11,000. So 11,000, I'm going to buy a used truck. It already has, in this case, probably 300,000 kilometers on it. And I'm only going to get 50,000 kilometers on it. So, and at the end of its life, I'm probably just going to get $1,000 for it. So that would be the amount I bought it for, 11,000, minus the 1,000 that I'm going to sell it for, so $10,000 divided by the years of use that I'm going to get out of it. And in this case, I'm going to say I get 2 years of use out of it, and that would be 5,000 per year that I would have to budget for, and for that dollar amount to be able to be paid by my clients, so that when I do flip that truck, get a new truck, my clients already paid for that truck. Now, where did I get those 2 years worth of use out of? Well, I just look at how many miles I drove last year, or on a yearly basis, and I just say, you know what, I put 25,000 kilometers on my truck per year. At 350,000, I want to be able to sell that truck. So it's just a matter of when do you want to be able to be out of that truck in terms of mileage, how many miles do you put on it per year, and to set the years of use at that point. Now, one thing you may want to note is that if you finance a vehicle, that calculation will not cover your monthly expenses, your monthly financing amount fully. And that's because you're not charging the client for the asset that you're going to have at the end of its life when you sell it. So that in that case, that $1,000 that we were going to sell it for at the end of its life. But if it's a new truck and you're going to get $20,000 back off a $100,000 truck, you're only charging your client for $80,000 over, let's say 8 years. So $10,000 a year. And with that, your financing might be $15,000 a year to get you to that $100,000 price tag. So it's very important to note that if you do use that calculation, you're not covering your cash flow completely for that truck. So if you do want to cover that cash flow completely with your financing, then it's best to just do the calculation of what you're financing it for per month to be able to put that into your budget. And that is essentially a cash flow budget. Now, we've talked about this on the podcast in the past in terms of a overhead recovery system. There's a few out there. There's single overhead recovery where you mark up labor, materials, subcontractors, all the same percentage to be able to make up your overhead expenses. And in doing that, as well as multiple overhead recovery system where you have a different percentage markup on each of those, so materials, labor, and subcontractors, to be able to recover your overhead. And with each of those, you need to set a sales goal that you want to hit to be able to know where you're going to be in terms of that net profit percentage, which then calculates how much percentage you can mark up each of those different factors. I've talked about it at length on this podcast. I'm not a huge fan of this single overhead recovery system or multiple overhead recovery system. I like to keep it simple and keep it straightforward and have one variable that I need to measure in my business, and that is labor hours. So I use a labor overhead recovery rate system. So all this is I set the amount of time that I have in my season. For example, we have 36 weeks in a year, and if a project is going to take me, let's easy math here, 3.6 weeks, so 10% of my season, then I'm going to apply 10% of my overhead expenses to that project to know that I'm recovering the overhead expenses that I'm going to incur based on my budget for that time period. Then I'm going to add my labor amount, I'm going to add my materials, and then I'm going to figure out a net profit percentage. Personally, I like to change the net profit percentage per project for my business. Many reasons why I do this. First and foremost, we do different types of services and not just, say, an interlock patio. We might do an interlock patio with a bunch of lighting, some walls, and drainage is another good one. But we also might do those separately. So I could do like a drainage project specifically. And I know that I can get a higher net profit percentage for a drainage project as opposed to a paver project. I also know that if I have a client that is a lot warmer or not shopping out for other contractors, or for example, in my scenario, I know that somebody coming from my YouTube videos to hire me on as a contractor, they really want me to do their project because they've seen my face, they've seen me work, they've seen my work on YouTube, and I know that I don't have to be as competitive for those types of projects. So my net profit percentage I can afford to be a little bit higher on those projects, as opposed to, let's say, we are struggling for work. We need work as soon as next week, or we know that this is a project that we want, and we know that there's 2 other contractors bidding on it. In those cases, if you need the work, you might be willing to lower your net profit percentage that you're willing to take on the project to be able to get it into your schedule. So that's why I like to adjust my net profit percentage by the project and not by the budget, not for the year specifically. Okay, to go through what we've already talked about here. We've talked about budgeting, we've talked about owner's salary, we've talked about gross profit, net profit, we've talked about equipment, and we have talked about overhead recovery systems, and then net profit by the project and why I like to do that. So I also want to talk about why budgeting is not the end all be all. Oh, and before that, I also want to say that budgeting, you can budget for your goals. So if you want to save up for a down payment for a truck that you know you're going to need 3 years down the road, 2 years down the road, you can incorporate that into your budget. You can add in 2 years, I want to have $20,000 saved up for a down payment on this piece of equipment or this truck. So you can add that into your budget to save for those goals. Which brings me to the next thing I want to talk about, which is the budget not being the end all be all, because you can get carried away in your budget and overprice yourself above the market. This is the difference between market-based pricing versus cost-based pricing. A budget provides you with cost-based pricing, which is important because you need to know your costs in your business and whether or not you're going to be profitable from your pricing strategy. So once you price a project after creating a budget, and you send that price out in a proposal to your clients, and you're constantly being told no, or even before you send it out, you say that's way too high compared to my market, and you know that it's just going to be too high. Well, that comes back down to, this is what your budget says. This is what you are going to pay in terms of your year. So if you think you're too high, there's one of two things that you need to do. One is cut expenses in your budget. What are you going to be able to cut in your budget to be able to fall within what you think is the market-based pricing? But that might be difficult for you because this could have been a bare bones budget for you. And at the end of the day, if you decide to cut something that might hurt you elsewhere, for example, marketing spend. It's always good to have some sort of marketing spend in there, and you could have just the bare bones equipment and tools. So in this scenario, option 2 would be to really focus on your sales process. And I've touched on a few episodes, and we've had a lot of great guests talking about the sales process and talking about sales. I've found what has worked really well for me, and I've talked about it at length in this podcast. So go back, maybe listen to a few of those episodes, as well as our experts that we've actually had on the show. But what I did was just really dialed in my sales process. I still have leads that, fall through my hands, that's sort of thing that I need to work on and get better at. But the leads that I actually do go out and do an estimate, and they, see my YouTube videos, those really lock me in for them, and we do really profitable work, thankfully, for those types of clients. Everything from as soon as they reach out to me to sending them our welcome package, which has more about me, the company, very small amount because I know our clients don't really care that much about that, but it's good to have some sort of about us. But we do have in that is a portfolio page. It is a photo of the project, and then it also has a YouTube play button that says click here to play, and they can see a time lapse of us doing that project. And that's in our portfolio page. And then we have another page showing step-by-step how we install a paver project, step-by-step how we install a segmental retaining wall project. And once again, videos for each of those steps, YouTube play button, click here to play. They can play it. They can see me, my face, walking them through everything. There's social proof there in terms of the subscribers, in terms of the view count, in terms of the comments that they can also read and see that I'm in there actually answering people's questions. So there's authority, there is social proof there. And that's going to get more and more important as the younger generation that grew up with the internet is becoming, has more and more disposable income to be able to pay for projects. So that's what I did to really dial in my sales process once we actually are able to make a good contact and to get out and do an estimate for a client with that. So sometimes it's not, and I know I'm priced higher than my market. And once again, I mentioned on another podcast, I always ask people that did not end up going with us why. It's always price. We're priced a little bit too high. Or I asked the clients that we did go with, or they did go with us, and they say that it had to do with our presentation and how thorough we were and detail oriented. And the How to Hardscape headquarters software has really helped us with dialing in our proposals because it's automatic. Everything in our description on how we install a project with hyperlinks automatically shows up in the proposal based on what we choose when we're quoting a project. So I don't have to type that out every single time. It's prepared and it's easy to send off to our clients. So I know we're priced higher than our market, at least for a smaller owner-operator business that maybe these companies or these clients are reaching out to. But that's a good thing. And for me especially, that is a good thing to know that I'm priced higher than my market. But if my close ratio was low and I looked at my budget and it was a bare bones budget, I know that it has to be my sales process that's really hurting me. So it's then time to really dial in that sales process, evaluate that sales process, and see what you can do to really make a better impression for your clients and to show them that you are the authority in the space. Whether that's through education. Once again, I leaned heavily on my YouTube videos, on my welcome package to do the heavy lifting for me, because if I'm on site and I'm just, on that consultation, that initial consultation, and I'm just overwhelming them with information, like we're going to excavate this depth and we're going to put this geotextile and we even put geogrid in the base, you're just going to overwhelm them. I just let them know, we're going to send a proposal. It has everything step by step how we build your project. And you can even click on the hyperlinks and see videos on how we do it visually if you want to. That way you can actually compare apples to apples with other contractors. So very important to note that your budget is your cost-based budget. And it's always good to see and evaluate your close ratio to know whether or not, hey, this is a sales process thing or this is a pricing thing. Am I just adding in way too many of my goals into my budget and really escalating my price so high that I really am just way above my market in terms of pricing, which I would say most people are probably not? Or is this a sales process thing that I need to really do a better job of communicating to my clients and getting them great information and showing them that I am the contractor that they want to be able to do their project for them? And that's another thing with the How to Hardscape headquarters software, is that we do have a sales pipeline from start to finish, everything from the initial contact to the consult to the proposal and then to an approved project. And you can see where there might be a hang up in your sales process over time based on the amount of hours or days that a client was in each of those different funnels before getting them a proposal or getting an approved project. So for example, if it took you a long time to send a proposal to be an approved project, or consultation to the proposal, so it took you a long time to send a proposal, then you need to dial in that proposal process. We also have close ratios built into our project dashboard, so you can see what your close ratio is at any point in time in your business, and also filter it to a smaller period of time to see how you're actually doing. And if you're a larger company, you can actually see it by the employee that prepared the projects. So the estimate for the projects, you can see it by the division as well. If you have multiple divisions, you can have multiple divisions and multiple budgets for each of those divisions in the software. Hey, are you planning to attend HNA Hardscape North America, October 22nd to the 24th in Louisville, Kentucky? Well, you can use our promo code VIPHTH to get 50% off your tickets, or you can click the link in the show notes below to register for this. I've gone the past 2 years. It is awesome. A massive trade show along with the Equip Exposition with more than 1,000 exhibits, 42,000 square feet hardscape house, as well as a 30 plus acre outdoor demo yard that you can demo equipment. There's the HNA Awards ceremony. There's lots of educational sessions throughout the day, and there's more than enough events before and after the trade show itself. I've always enjoyed my time. I'll see you there. Use the code VIPHTH to get 50% off your tickets and register sooner rather than later, because tickets do increase leading up to the show. And then through all that, we have job costing as well. The main thing with job costing, especially if you're using a labor rate recovery system, and especially if you're an owner operator, main thing is just tracking your hours. Are you hitting your hours for that? Definitely check materials. But if you're an owner operator, you're in the field, you likely know if you're off on materials, whether you're too high and you need to bring materials back to your vendor to get a refund, or if you're too low and you actually have to source those materials now. That's an easy thing to know if you're way off on those materials. It's also good to double check the dollar amounts that you have in your system, in your software, of the square footage dollar amounts for materials versus what your vendor's actually charging for. Maybe you missed a price increase or so on there. But the main thing, especially with a labor rate recovery system, is those hours, because those hours are tied to your labor costs, but they're also tied to the overhead expenses. So if you're not hitting those hours, if you're above hours, that's going to affect your labor and overhead. If you're under those hours, you know that you made money not only on the labor side of things, you saved money. I would say you should always be making money on your labor anyways, so that's where profit comes into play and why we do net profit by project. But also that's going to affect the calculation for your overhead. So very important thing to measure there, your labor hours. And we are releasing an update very shortly here with the time tracking, that anytime you clock in, you can always see where you are in terms of your progress on that project, with a status bar with where you're at for your hours versus what you estimated. We already have that with our job costing tab, but we're just adding it there on the time tracking, so that every single time you or your employees clock in, they know exactly where they're at with that progress bar with those hours, because that's the most important thing, especially with our software. Besides that, How to Hardscape headquarters software, quick little plug in here for it. Besides the budgeting, estimating, job costing, we have a simple scheduling tool. We're going to improve that. It's going to get much better. We have chat groups, so you can create company-wide chat groups, divisional chat groups. You can create custom chat groups however you want, but also anytime a project has been approved by a client, they digitally sign it through your proposal that you send them, send it back to you through the system. It creates a chat group automatically with the employees that you have assigned to that project in the chat group. We have, so time tracking, I've already gone through that. Also with time tracking, we have forums, so you can set up multiple forums. And you can assign them through in different areas within the software. The main one being the time tracking. So as soon as your employee clocks in, they can submit a form, and that form can be a safety check. That form can be a equipment check, or so on and so forth here. Multiple choice questions, text fields, whatever that might be. We have that there in the time tracking. As soon as they clock in, they can also clock in and out of your production rates to measure and track those production rates. We have also a CRM for your clients. We have courses, so you can create your own courses, or we have our own installation courses. So we have segmental retaining wall installation 3-hour course. We have an interlocking concrete pavement installation 3-hour course. We also have installing lighting, and we also have gas fire feature installation. And then we have a few other courses on budgeting, estimating, knowing your numbers. But the interlock and the segmental retaining wall, they have 50 question tests at the end of them. You can assign them to your employees. Think training, onboarding purposes. They get certificates of completion if they complete the actual test and the course, and that gets documented there. You can also create your own courses, and we do have guides that you can use on the software to be able to create those courses, and YouTube videos that you can include in there. We don't, since they're not our YouTube videos, we don't create the courses, and they don't automatically show up in your account like those other courses do, the ones that we did create. So you'd have to go through, but for example, we have a general health and safety course, and we have a PPE course, a sun exposure safety course, respirator course, silica hazards course, how to safely maintain and operate off a cutoff saw. Good for just, hey, let's get this safety check done before you actually get into the field and start using it. And how to operate a skid steer loader course, how to operate a mini excavator course, and so on there. So just a bunch of courses that you can create on your own, assigned to your employees, have that check done that they have completed it. And now we rolled out a points reward system, so you can create event triggers for different points within the software. For example, an employee completes a course. For example, they submitted their company policy, or they remember to clock in at the beginning of the day, or on time, and they remember to clock out at the end of the day. Those all get points, and you are able to customize the amount of points that they get. Good gamification system within your business that you can set rewards for, incentives, monthly, quarterly, yearly, whatever that might be. There's also a leaderboard that you can see where each of your employees are at. They can see where they rank in terms of those points for your business. You can reset the points if you need to, whatever that is for your specific business. And that is all I'm going to talk about when it comes to the How to Hardscape headquarters software for this episode. Knowledge Tree Consulting, George and Peter of Oriole Landscaping. You've heard me talk about them on previous episodes. They have an event coming up August 19th to the 20th. This is going to be a behind the scenes tour of Koivik, a second generation multi-division firm known for operational excellence and exceptional results. I went to a Knowledge Tree Consulting event last year. That was with Earthscape. You've heard me have Sam Bauman on from that business, and this was a really great event. I cannot recommend this enough. The first day, there's going to be a welcome reception and an optional networking dinner. The next day, early in the morning, departing for Koivik, doing the facility tour, which includes the shop, soil production, specimen tree nursery, office operations, sessions and client experience. So you rotate through those different areas. And then after that facility tour back at the hotel, there's going to be strategy sessions and then an evening dinner. This is in Toronto. The shop is in Milton. And there's going to be a link in the show notes for you to get 50% off your tickets through the How to Hardscape podcast. So click that link, learn more about that event, and register today. But I hope this is a helpful episode when it comes to budgeting, estimating from that budget. We touched on a lot. I have gone in depth on each of those different topics that I talked about that I can't even remember to recap at this point in time after talking here. But there's tons of episodes. We've also had some great guests talk on these episodes on these topics. Overhead recovery system, we covered that in depth 2 years ago. Had a few different guests on to talk further about that. We have done budgeting. Once a year, I'll sit down and do a budgeting episode kind of like this. So that's been covered in depth. We have Cycle CPA coming on once every quarter or so to help us with our bookkeeping, accounting, so that we know at least a little bit about that side of things and a little bit about, say, the direct and indirect costs and so on and so forth. They also contributed a balance sheet and profit and loss statement video course on one of those courses within the How to Hardscape headquarters software. This is the Knowing Your Numbers course, and there are 2 videos. They did an hour on each of those. So an hour on a balance sheet and an hour on a profit and loss statement is really great. And if you want to check those out, those are within the software. Or if you just want access to the courses, members.howtohardscape.com. If you just want to be able to get access to those courses, if you're trying to learn hardscaping, trying to get into budgeting, estimating, knowing your numbers, all of that is available for you there. But thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoy these episodes where I just sit down and talk for this amount of time, I would really appreciate your feedback, even if it's a no, like, let's get on guests. What are you doing? Just send me a message at How to Hardscape. I don't take anything personally. So just send me that message. Yes, no, maybe every once in a while. I would appreciate your feedback at How to Hardscape on Instagram. Send me those messages. Critical feedback. I'm more than happy to hear. And our sponsors have been great. They keep us going, keep us running with this podcast. So if you do want to check out any of them, I highly recommend. Links are in the show notes. And with that being said, let's say thank you to our sponsors. Cycle CPA, if you're looking for bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA at cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for money off their services there. PatioSEO.com. And now you know Patio SEO can take your hardscape business to the next level. James Reed and his expert team have built a reputation on success, not just for their own companies, but for hundreds of others just like yours. So don't wait. Visit PatioSEO.com to learn more and get started. But also be sure to follow James's journey on Instagram at Road to 100 M's. That's Road to 100 MS for behind the scenes tips and insights. And I do recommend checking that out and following along to that. Ready to build your brand? Patio SEO is here to help you every step of the way. August 19th to the 20th, Knowledge Tree Consulting is having another event at Koivik. This event is in Toronto. Koivik is in Milton. I went to their event last year with Earthscape. It was awesome. I can't recommend this enough. There's going to be a link in the show notes for you to sign up for it and get 50% off your tickets today. If you're planning to go to Hardscape North America in Louisville, Kentucky, October 22nd to the 24th, you can use promo code VIPHTH to sign up, get 50% off your registration. That also gives us a little bit of a kickback and helps us here at the How to Hardscape podcast. And we look forward to meeting you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.